Hello, everyone. I hope we got all the list of people that are on the call with us. We've got 4 great people here, or my people that can take questions in the weeds and be able to give a lot of insightful information. First of all, the West Virginia Press Association and editorial boards that are on here and everything. I guess where I should start off is thanking you. You write all the time about the possible future of West Virginia, and you write about what is hopeful to come and what you think is coming, and we continue to try in any and every way to make life better for all of us in West Virginia. Now, through all that, we've surely had some stumbling blocks over the decades and decades, but we're really, genuinely, really on the move right now in the state of West Virginia. Again, by your focus, a lot of the reality of what is happening is you can take a lot of credit for making that happen because you've kept it right at the forefront. There is nothing that I can see right now that's as important as broadband across this state. So many people come and are disappointed when they come because, we don't have the ability to even connect ourselves, in many, many different areas of our state. Well, in doing so, it's surely difficult not only to attract, but it's also extremely difficult to keep. So there's so many, the horizons are limitless on what we can do. But if you'll just step back and think about this state and where we're going and what we're doing, today I was able to announce an unemployment number that no one could have ever even dreamt of. 3.2% in the state of West Virginia. The lowest unemployment number in the history, it's hard to believe, but in the history of the state. Not long ago, right before that, a couple of weeks ago, ranked in the top 10 in the country in GDP growth. Over and over and over, we've got $1 billion in the rainy day fund. We've got tourism booming like crazy and limitless possibilities. There is so many things that are right at our fingertips. Everywhere you turn, there's an orange cone and some road being paved or some road being constructed. There is so many things that are happening in West Virginia just as we speak. Surplus after surplus after surplus. Lots of great things that we can do from that. Now, and through all that, we got there battling this terrible pandemic. And I hope and pray that you think that we've got us to where we are today. Surely we could all think it could have been better, but it's hard to argue that it's really not too awful bad considering all the possibilities of how bad could have really been. I mean, if you'll just step back and think, 3rd oldest state in the country, the most vulnerable state from the standpoint of all the chronic illnesses that we have, bordered by no ocean or no Great Lake, nothing to stop this. Within a rock's throw of 2/3 of the population of the country, we could have been the mega disaster. Sure, it's been 18 months, it's been tough, it's been long, but we're getting there. We're getting there, slowly but surely. We've lost in excess of 4,200 people in the state of West Virginia. It's sad beyond comprehension. I've read every one of those names. It's sure not been any fun. So with all that, all I would say is, as we've tackled really serious problems, and we have, when it all started, we had a deficit off the chart. We had nowhere to turn. We drained our rainy day fund, bonds being derated. I mean, we were in what the guy in South Carolina that was a great friend of mine always said, a true dog's mess. And from all that, We've turned a dog's mess into something that no one could have ever imagined. A diamond in the rough. That's the way people now look at West Virginia. They look at West Virginia with those 4 incredible seasons, and look outside your doors right now. Just look. Absolutely the greatest state with all kinds of limitless possibilities. Along the way, we could have thrown in the towel on our natural resources, could we not? Everybody probably wanted to sit around and say, coal's dead, gas isn't going to make it, it's all dead. Well, lo and behold, look what's happened. The only big time regret that I have in regard to that is, in the first day of the state, I said we should tier the severance tax on coal, oil, and gas. Coal at that time steam coal was $30 a ton, and metallurgical coal was probably $60. Just think if we had done that. And even in this last go-round, the last state of the state, I said the same thing. Now's the chance. Now's the chance for us to tier the severance tax on oil and gas and coal. We didn't do it. Today, it could be bringing in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to our state. It's a mistake. But going forward, we just got to continue to go north, do we not? Now, this state's really on the move, but a great part of this state being on the move is all these great people that are around me. I'm with our Secretary of Economic Development, Ms. Carmichael, and he's got some of his crew right here with him. He'll introduce them in just one second. But in all of that, now we have put a stake in the sand. We have made tremendous, progress in regard to our highways across the state. But now we're going to have a digital highway, a highway that's going to cover up this state. But you couldn't do it with a Band-Aid. You couldn't do it. You couldn't stop the broadband cancer across our state with a Band-Aid or an aspirin. You had to do it with real planning, real mapping, real work from these great people that are all around. And at the end of the day, you'll see that us putting the stake in the sand of $1 billion, a billion with a B, dollar investment in broadband in our state is going to turn the key. Now, with all that, I'd end by just saying this. Your focus and your love for West Virginia has really made a big difference. I congratulate you on that, and I mean it. You know me well enough to know I don't blow smoke at anybody. I don't have time for it. I want to be kind, I want to be trustworthy, and I want to be truthful. But I don't have time to sit around and patronize people and blow smoke at people. I mean it when I say that your focus on this very item, broadband across this state, has made an awful lot of this happen. So I thank you, and now I'm going to turn over to our Secretary of Economic Development, Ms. Carmichael, and Mitch has led the way with this, and what a job he's doing. I couldn't say more, and the great people with him, I congratulate all y'all, and I'll let him introduce.
Well, thank you, Governor, and thank you for your diligent focus on this very important issue, providing broadband services throughout West Virginia. And also, I don't want to just delve right into this issue without just stepping back for a second and saying thank you for the leadership over the last several years in this state, taking it from where, when you inherited all these problems, these deficits, these unemployment rates, declining revenue, dilapidated pension funds and rainy day funds. And we've turned that around, and I know you pass credit out liberally to all of those who are involved, but thank you for your leadership on this. And this one issue now, broadband internet connectivity in West Virginia, has held us back in spite of all the growth that we've had. And because these programs, in coordination with the federal government, state, local, and private sector entities, will energize and hopefully solve the internet connectivity issue in West Virginia. We're making enormous progress, and we've put in place, at your direction, all the tools that are necessary to map the data and to then propagate broadband services to those who do not have it. So for the Press Association, again, thank you, as the Governor said, for focusing on this issue because it is so critical to our citizens and to business and economic development. And so I think it's very appropriate that broadband falls within the Department of Economic Development. And so we've got programs in place, plans, mapping, avenues in which to utilize these funds to deploy the broadband. I want to introduce some of our team and then come back around for questions from the Press Association. But, you know, at a very high level, as the governor said, we're investing $1 billion in several well thought out, advised programs to deploy these assets into the areas that are most at need. So I'm going to introduce, to begin with, the First Lady of Broadband in West Virginia, Kelly Workman, who runs the broadband office and has worked in this area for some time. She has several years with state government, and she's doing a fantastic job. And then she'll introduce to her right Jamie Hoffman, and then I'll introduce one of our program coordinators, Vic Sprouse, to my left. So, First Lady of Broadband, Kelly.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary, and thank you, Governor Justice. It's an honor to be here with you today. We've worked for so many years to improve broadband in West Virginia, and thanks to our governor's leadership, we are about to make some really serious improvements, so we're so happy to be part of that. West Virginians value connections, and everything we've done and everything that we're going to explain to you today, we have done on behalf of our friends and neighbors throughout West Virginia who do not have broadband connectivity. And we have worked so hard because we know how important that is to each and every one of us as we function in our new economy and we look to the future. So, Governor, I want to thank you personally. The governor approved the state's use of community development block grant funding in 2017. And this is when you really showed the state of West Virginia that you were serious about broadband development in our state. And so that began a really intensive effort throughout our state. Many of our counties took part in that opportunity. They initiated planning projects. And so many local governments throughout West Virginia are so well poised because of the governor's leadership in 2017. And we are ready to take full advantage of the federal funding that is going to become available very soon, and the state legislature's allocation of funding for broadband. So it's just a wonderful day to be here with you. I appreciate every member of our team here, and also my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Jamie Hoffman, who is our GIS coordinator in the Department of Economic Development.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Mr. Governor, for having me. This is a huge honor to be here, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. And first, want to thank our team here for just incredible leadership and the amount of work we put in to develop these maps and get these programs prepared. So as a GIS coordinator, I manage all the data and mapping for broadband development. We have just made a huge transition to map broadband availability from the census block level granularly down to the address level. We have accounted for 200,000 and counting addresses that we'll be targeting for our broadband programs. We've identified addresses who have access to broadband and who will be receiving broadband throughout the state. Huge thank you to our residents of West Virginia that have participated in our speed test and survey. We've had our residents call in that don't even have internet to begin with and talk to us on the phone, willing to provide their information so we can update our address database and identify that they lack service. And those with poor service at the moment have taken the tests. They have spoken up, and we are working hard to get broadband to them as soon as possible. So it's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Jamie. And then to my left is Vic Sprouse, who helps us coordinate these programs and helps us apply for and pull down all the grant funding that's available and puts it together in one nice package. So, Vic, if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And Governor, I served in the Senate and legislature under 4 governors, and I can't tell you how many promises that I heard that were never, ever fulfilled. And, you know, before I came into this a couple years ago, you said that, hey, we're gonna tackle this problem in the state. And You did. You are. You know, I mean, it's rare to see that. And so I'm honored to be here under the Secretary, under your leadership. After seeing so many missteps and not getting this done, you've made it your priority to put $1 billion into West Virginia and broadband. I am, since I've come in, I've heard one thing, and that is we need to maximize the amount of federal dollars that are coming into the state. We need to ensure that we go get those quickly. And Governor and Mr. Secretary, we were the first state in the nation to actually apply for the capital projects funds, the $136 million that we're going to get. And I will say that the team that I joined is a great one that's going to deliver. And one thing that I think every press member, every member of the legislature always wants is, okay, we're going to give you this money, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to deliver on this? And I feel like you have a great team that's going to make this happen for the state. I'm proud to be included. And I will say one thing. Jamie's very quiet over there as the mapping guy. My understanding is none of this would probably be happening without Jamie. Being able to identify in this state who is served and who is unserved. We know that the maps that the FCC does is not, they're not accurate. And so being able to go down to the address level and say this block is served, this street is unserved, gives us the ability to target that funding and ensure that the unserved in West Virginia becomes served. So I'm proud to be part of the team, excited to answer any questions that I may be able to help out on, and proud to be under the leadership of the governor and the secretary.
You're back to me now? Okay, and I'm going to call on Don. Is that correct? Don, if you can hear me, and we're going to hand it over to you now, and you're going to run with the ball. So Don, take over, sir.
Well, Governor, thank you, and thanks everybody in the media for being here. I'll start off I want to go right to the questions because I know these folks have some questions about their areas and different parts of this. And maybe Secretary Carmichael, who has a lot of experience with this. We've seen internet programs before, and the one complaint in West Virginia, whether it's in the northern panhandle, the center part of the state, even Kanawha County, is that we spend a lot of money on an internet expansion, and what we end up with is the people who have internet get better internet, but it doesn't seem like as many new people get it as we were promised or expected. How does that not happen this time?
Great question. And it's we hear this all the time, and we can put the Press Association and everyone in West Virginia's mind at ease. The governor's been very direct on this, as has the U.S. Treasury. This money can only be utilized to serve those who do not have broadband service. So we are absolutely going to those who are currently unserved as defined by the FCC, which is 25 down, 3 up megabit speeds. And so, and that dovetails in with what Vic was saying, Don, saying about Jamie's mapping portal. We know exactly in this state who has broadband, who does not. We didn't take the FCC's word for it. We're mapping it correctly and with the input of citizens throughout West Virginia who are taking the speed test. So great question, and very quick to answer with this is that it is going 100% to the unserved. And furthermore, it will be a post-award audit process in which we go back. The governor's been very firm on saying, we're not just going to provide this money and then hope that people get internet. We're going back and doing audits, random audits, and speed test data on those who received broadband. So great question, and I hope we knocked that one out of the park, as you would say.
And Don, wait 1 second, Don. Let me add just this, and I want, everyone to, I am so hung up on the truth all the time. But I want everyone that's on the call and surely all of us on our panel to know, everyone should know this, that along the way, we'll stub our toe somewhere. This mapping is so complex and so difficult, it's unbelievable. But I tell everybody, when you go to church, hear the message. hear the message of what the sermon really was all about. Don't sit there the whole time and say, you know, the preacher's button on his right sleeve is off. You know, I mean, the message here, we will be so right because this is dollars for the underserved or those that are unserved. And along the way, we'll stub our toe somewhere. But overwhelmingly, you know, Don, we're going to knock it out of the park right now.
Well, Governor, we want to hear that because we have papers in every county and they're trying to do more online. And just like every other business in the state, they're struggling because of internet connectivity. With that, I'll go to Damon Kane at the Register Herald in Beckley. Damon, a question?
Yeah, let's continue with who's going to be served, which is of great interest out here in the rural recesses of our state. And so when you talk about you're targeting 200,000 addresses, how many addresses are currently not being received? I'm trying to get it at a figure of what's going to be left on the table, who's not going to be served after this $1 billion is invested. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm going to take a very little time to answer, and then I'm going to kick it to Kelly and Jamie, because if it's okay, Governor.
Sure.
So our mapping data, I think it was Damon, has all the information about where the FCC requires a report. It's called the 477 report that identifies self-reported broadband providers, and they say where they serve and who they serve in West Virginia. That's a report that's available annually. We take that data and then mesh it up against our speed test data and so forth to say, no, FCC or provider, you really don't have internet service to this area. And so we go through and identify on a census block level, clear down to the address level as to who has broadband and who does not. And now we're going through a process to continue to refine that and get comments from the various providers and to make sure that we think the range is in, 300,000 probably homes that do not currently have broadband. But as we continue to refine that process, we think we're going to get down a little lower than that. And this program, when we expand it and work with it and become greatly efficient with it, we hope to get all of those homes. But if I could call on Kelly and Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Secretary Carmichael. So just to give you a little bit more context as to how we have arrived at this point, up until now, the FCC has mapped broadband data at the census block level. So if one resident or one location within that census block has broadband service at 25.3, that entire census block is counted as served. And our issue in West Virginia has been that, you know, one person in that census block may be served, but there may be 50 others who are not. So we have made a crucial transition in West Virginia from census block data, which is very generous and very general, to address level data. And in order to do that, we have utilized the E911 address database, and we have issued a request for comment regarding unserved areas to all of the carriers in West Virginia. We started that process this summer. In advance of the federal government, the FCC, moving in that same direction. So we are actually moving ahead of the federal government in that effort because West Virginia, along with many other states, has long petitioned the FCC to move away from this census block data to address level data because the current system unfairly penalizes those residents who do not actually have service, and they're just included in this generalized number that doesn't really reflect reality on the ground. So that process is underway, and I do want to make the point that we have taken a major step forward this year, but broadband mapping, just like every other type of infrastructure mapping, needs to be a continuous process. Infrastructure is always changing and developing, and so we will continue to refine this process and develop greater precision as we go. But I'll also ask Jamie to just elaborate on the process to date, because he's been intimately involved in helping us collect the data, analyze the data, see where we are right now, and which direction we need to go in the future.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a great opportunity to speak about our comment period, which was a huge advancement in progress with accurately mapping broadband availability across the state. Like Kelly had said, the core issue with broadband mapping before we began our comment period stemmed from the FCC and their over-exaggeration on who's served and who's unserved. So what we did is we reached out to providers operating within the state to elaborate on those areas to identify where their existing infrastructure is, where the extent of their service capabilities are as who they can provide broadband. If someone were to call them up right now and request service, how quickly they can receive that service. So huge thanks to our providers that we worked with that participated in our comment period. We took that data and we analyzed that very thoroughly. Coupled it with our address data, our E911 database, and then conducted field surveys to go out and identify the existing infrastructure in the areas where they had reported they had service to us. We looked at the extent of that, addresses beyond the service territories, and we began validating this information, then rendering that into our digital database and then into our maps. So it was a very intensive activity that really made the shift from census block to addresses. And at this point, we're near finalization of the final data set we'll be publishing. But we were able to identify addresses that are within funded areas that's receiving funding from state, local, or federal programs, and then companies that have reported serving particular areas with fiber or cable that can transmit excellent service. So those are the areas we do not want to go into. We want to ensure we get high-speed, state-of-the-art broadband out to our unserved communities. So the number of addresses within those areas, I can't recall off the top of my head, but we have those areas identified at the address level.
Okay, thank you very much. For great detailed answer. I'm sorry, Governor?
Wait just one second. Damon, this is Jim. Damon, first of all, I appreciate you being on and everything, and I just wanted to add just this. I can add this real quick. You've always been fair and you're a friend, but Damon, just think about this just a second. Where we are today, and I'll just dumb this down and make it really, really simple for everybody, me included, but I'll make this super simple. Where we are today is a mess, unbelievable. That's all there is to it. Just a flat mess. Any way you cut it, a mess. Now, you've had a lot of great people here that have really, really worked at it, and they've got a real plan, and they came to us with a real plan and said, Governor, this is going to cost a lot of money. And so some way, somehow, we've done the planning, and we've put it together, and now we've put real money into it, and we're going to make it from a mess to much, much, much better. At the end of the day, then, Damon, what's going to have to happen is just this. After we make it much, much better, if there's anybody that we've left out, we're going to have to come back and put a few more bucks in it, and we're going to have to go get them too. And that's the whole plan.
Okay, good.
All right, Governor, thank you. I want to point out that we also, the Press Association, while we represent the newspapers, we have online, we have radio and television people with us today, and we're glad to have you. I'm going to go to Charles Young next. Charles?
Hi, this is Charles Young with WV News. I wanted to ask a little bit about what's happened over the last year. When this announcement was made at the end of last week, it seemed like it was framed like a brand new announcement. But you guys actually announced this last October when it was branded as Big Jim's Broadband Prosperity Project. I was wondering, kind of why the branding changed, why the previous announcement wasn't referenced this time around, and the work that's gone on in between that. Was that just finalizing everything that was recently announced?
I don't know. You've got to answer this, and I don't remember Big Jim.
Well, I think this is a fulfillment of that promise that was made previously. And so while there was a commitment made, the governor's fulfilling that commitment now by putting real dollars in it. And also the state legislature and the governor put on a special session call, an allocation of $100 million from both ARPA funds and state surplus funds. And then I think it's very important to recognize for the reporters and so forth, sort of what Vic's doing within our office is coordinating all those different elements of broadband funding streams. Because what could happen, and what some states will do and screw this up, is that you will get multiple overlapping funding streams coming to the same area without the synergistic effect of using these funds in a way that basically transforms West Virginia and does so in a way that's greater than the sum of the parts. And that's really the goal here. And
and that's what I was going to say too, Mr. Secretary, and that is, before I came here, the governor had made that promise that, hey, we are going to go down this road and we are going to make this happen for the state. And then last Friday, he did make it happen. So it was a promise made and a promise kept. And so also the other fact is, I think that the Capital Projects Fund has been kind of slowly moving through this process. And we are now finally where we've applied. We're ready to bring that money down. We're going to match that. We're going to have $136 million come down from the Capital Projects Fund from ARPA, and that matched with the governor's commitment of $90 million of ARPA funding and $10 million from the state. That we are going to have $236 million soon, right within weeks, that we can start deploying and accepting applications. Whenever you look at a project that is this wide-ranging and implementation of this big of a dollar amount, certainly before I got here, Kelly and Jamie and the secretary, and now that I've been here, this is not something that you just roll out in a week and say, we're going to go do this. It took months and months and months of getting this process together to ensure that we have a process that works at the end. And that's where we're at today.
Great. All right, now I'll go to Douglas Soul. Douglas?
Hey, I'm Douglas Soul with the New Source Mountain State Spotlight. This question was already touched on, but I wanted to ask in a little bit of a different way to make sure all bases are covered. Governor, we all know West Virginia has had a bit of a history of broadband money being misspent by tech companies and state officials alike. And my question is, what specific new protections is your administration putting into place so that this billion is not being wasted and West Virginians are getting the broadband access they need?
I might take that if you don't mind, Douglas. We've put an oversight and monitoring evaluation criteria in place that is scored independently by separate consultants that we're working with to ensure that they work with on a national level to ensure that these commitments of funds and the commitment of turning up broadband to these particular areas is fulfilled by the provider. So this is the first time you've heard about a broadband initiative in West Virginia in which there is a post-award monitoring process and auditing process in place. And, I've just got the key points and the highlights of that program, but we've got it structured out with all the different components of how we go about the audits, the speed test, the validation, and the verification.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now I want to go to Tori with WSAZ.
Hi, Don. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, we've done a ton of stories about how difficult virtual school was due to internet access for students, out in Mingo, Logan, Boone, Lincoln counties, and that's just to name a few, and I mean really just a few. So my question is, and forgive me if this has kind of been addressed already, but do you have anywhere specifically that you know of that will be more of a larger focus for this project? For example, do you see your work happening out in Logan County or in Wayne County being a lot more hefty than places like Kanawha? I'm just trying to get a feel if you're really focused in on one area or this really is just completely widespread, spread out. And I know this is a big project, so do you feel you will cover all of those areas that are really in need on this? Thank you.
Yes, we will cover all the areas. In fact, one of our scoring criteria is geographic dispersion, making sure that these funds are distributed in the areas that a couple of criteria. One is the socioeconomic demographic, making sure that we're reaching those who maybe otherwise could not afford to fund broadband to their neighborhoods. I want to point out, you led into this question by the distance learning and so forth, the school at home, and the governor very quickly, as soon as this pandemic got really raging and we had to shut down the schools, was very adamant about putting forth a wireless program at the individual hotspots for those schools. So that money was utilized to provide that avenue for student learning. While that's not the ideal, it was very quickly done. I mean, incredibly quickly done. Remember, Governor, we had to get that basically done over a couple of weekends, and it was unbelievable efforts to get that done. Now, having said that, the other pieces you're talking about, Tori, about, yes, distance learning, but remote work, telehealth, all of the different components that go into the, a 21st century economy. We are widely dispersing the funds, and Jamie could tell you, in fact, what's the mapping portal? WVBroadband.com?
Yeah, broadband.wv.gov. That's the mapping portal for
broadband.wv.gov. And if you go to that site, any of the reporters or anyone in West Virginia, you can look at the exact maps that say where the unfunded exist in West Virginia, and those are the areas that will be the target for this program.
When I was going to say add one thing to that is one of the surprises that I had, I guess, is whenever you think of broadband the secretary and I went over to the governor's office and we held up this map, and I was Vanna White, of the areas throughout the state that did not have broadband. And it surprised me how widespread that was, where you could have a geographic dispersion. Because I know you mentioned Kanawha County. There's areas in Kanawha County that people in Kanawha County will tell you, hey, don't think of Charleston when you think of Kanawha County. Think of Sissonville or think of Bell. And so those areas are our primary areas, and the governor and the secretary have made clear that our goal is to serve the unserved. And those unserved are spread out throughout the state, and those are the ones that we're going to go after.
Okay, now Lori.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So just a few logistical questions. I heard 200,000 are the individual addresses that will be targeted. And then I also heard 300,000 was the number that said addresses are still remaining to receive good broadband connectivity. So what are the two numbers? And when can people start expecting to see this come to fruition in their own backyards?
Well, let me take the last question first. You'll start to see an immediate impact with some of the programs that are in place. There's various programs that are incorporated in this entire aggregate of $1 billion. So very shortly, frankly, the governor, it can't happen quick enough for him. And it's like he wants somebody turned up before this press conference is over. And that's our goal, is to have plenty of new connections before the end of the year, but over a period of time, 2 years maximum on some of these programs, and on some of the federal programs up to 5 years. So it takes some time, but the effort is ongoing, it's immediate, and it's concentrated, and it's focused. And then in terms of the mapping data, and we talk about, and I was always hesitant to put the number of people that we could reach with this program, but what you'll see is that roughly works out, anybody can do the math, $5,000 per connection. And when you talk about that, we expect to exceed that. The governor will be very diligent about making sure that we utilize those funds in the most efficient manner. But these very remote builds in the mountainous terrain and so forth, and the sparsity of the population, some of them might exceed 5,000. Some will be less than that. So our goal is to get everyone. And as we go through this mapping portal that Jamie and Kelly are working with, you may want to elaborate, we're continuing to whittle down that number. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure, thank you. Larissa, so there's just such a discrepancy in the numbers, and that's what we've really been struggling with over the past couple of years. The FCC estimate is about 350,000 West Virginians that lack broadband. When we are looking at our database and our data set, we're looking at households. So if we talk about 200,000 households, you know, the current multiplier, I think, for an average family in West Virginia is 2.9 people. So if you have 350,000 people estimated by the FCC, and you hear us talking about 200,000 households, our number is going to be larger than the FCC. So we do believe that there are more people that are unserved in West Virginia than the FCC currently reports. And our goal with our first wave of funding is to get to a point of what we call functional connectivity, meaning that we would like to see us get to, you know, a good top level number, let's say 90% that of our unserved population or rural areas that we've reached with broadband. Then we can continue to work on that 10%, and we have to make it a goal. The governor's committed, the legislature has committed to making sure that we maintain a sustainable broadband development program in West Virginia, and that we don't forget about those people that we might not reach in this first wave of funding. But just like water and sewer, there has to be a sustained commitment to this type of infrastructure development. So we're at the very early stages of that. And when we talk about the $1 billion figure, our office is coordinating all of those funding streams. That's going to be Vic's responsibility going forward. But we are maintaining all of the federal funding that comes into our state. Our office is not directly administering some of that funding, but we are still mapping it. So we are not going to step on our own toes. And that's a big part of what Jamie has been able to do with his mapping expertise. So we're mapping all of the federal funding that comes in to West Virginia, where it's going, how many locations it's serving, and then what remains. So those will be the areas that we focus on going forward.
We have a question from Kate Chooney at the Morgan Messenger, and I want to get it in because I know we're running long on time and we appreciate it. And I think it's a good question. Kate points out, she wants to know is there a division or a plan on how much of the money goes into infrastructure and extending the lines, and how much of it goes into helping the people get access at the household level? We have a state with a lot of people on fixed income. We have a lot of senior citizens. Having broadband out there is great, but are you looking at the cost to what the consumer is going to have to face at the other end so that people can actually get the broadband once it's in the market?
It's a great question. Kate, it's a great question.
Kate, Morgan Messenger, yes.
Yeah, Kate, great question. And the answer is yes. We are incorporating all that into our evaluation criteria. In West Virginia, you may know, and the question may stem from the fact that in areas where broadband is available, oftentimes the customers don't avail themselves of it because of the cost factor. So one of the components in our scoring mechanism is an affordability tier. And then also there's a federal program called the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program that provides $50 a month subsidy to any county resident in which their county participates in Title I free or reduced lunch program. So that's basically every place in West Virginia. So affordability, yes. All of these areas, for instance, Governor, you may not want me to say, but there's areas in Lewisburg that don't have broadband service. There's areas in White Sulphur Springs, all through Greenbrier County, Raleigh, areas that we're trying to recruit for the Ascend West Virginia program. And there's problems with broadband connectivity. So there is nowhere in West Virginia where we're not focused on getting broadband service and deliverables as well as affordability for our citizens.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. And I'll ask, if I can, one other question. As I don't know if we have a lot more to ask, but Secretary, I know you're talking about the Ascend program. You are trying to do economic development, attract businesses to West Virginia. How does this dovetail into your efforts in those areas?
It's perfectly matched. I mean, there's no way that they're all juxtaposed together. Without broadband expansion and connectivity, economic development suffers. The Ascend West Virginia program, the people that are coming here to work remotely, by definition, require broadband internet connectivity. And so I think it's amazing when you step back and look at the success West Virginia's had over the last several years and under the governor's leadership, the incredible results and scores and numbers that they're putting up, and then doing it with the worst broadband in America from a connectivity standpoint. Can you imagine how this state is going to light on fire when we provide internet broadband connectivity to these 200,000 or more homes that don't currently have it? This is, I'm not going to use the overused term game changer because we're in a great game right now. We don't need to necessarily change it. But this is a monumental step forward in West Virginia's economic future and development. And so.
Okay. Other questions? We have a list of people coming in. Other questions? Because I know I told everybody it'd be an hour, and I'm sure they have other commitments, and I'm certainly that the governor and you do. I don't see other hands up or other questions. So with that, Governor, Secretary Carmichael, panel, we want to thank you for your time. Any closing statements you want to make, Governor or Secretary, anyone?
Well, I want to clean this up. Charles, I don't really know who had the banner. It said Big Jim Broadband or something like that, but I didn't even get to keep the banner, so I didn't remember the Big Jim part. But the other thing is I want to just take just 1 second to really, really thank our legislature, to thank President Blair, to thank Speaker Hanshaw, to thank them for really, really stepping up. I mean, in all honesty, there's no way that we're going to go across the finish line here unless we all pull the rope together. And a special thanks also to our senators, and I'm just going to call them by their first names, but Shelley and Joe and our congressmen and congresswomen, and I'm going to start with Carol, and David and Alex and everything for what they've done. All this is a collaborative effort by a lot of folks that are really making it really happen. At the end of the day, I've got to steer the boat. And I've got to show my real life commitment to what we're doing. But there's many levels of appreciation and thanks that ought to go around to a lot of people. And I'll end by just saying this. Our Secretary of Economic Development is doing one hell of a job. That's all there is to it. And these great people that are around him, whether it be Kelly or Vic or Jamie and everything, I just love what you're doing because you're really making a real life difference here. And if we stay right on task and we just bear down and we say, we're going after all these people that are unserved right now, and then anybody we leave off, we're going to double back and get them too. And in that effort, we're going to really make a difference. We're going to make a big difference in a lot of lives. So let's just keep it going. I'm really proud and honored to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Thank everybody. And again, thanks to all the media groups, the newspapers, the radio, television, and online. We appreciate everybody. Thank you for your time. Everybody have a great day. And with that, we'll call an end to this. Thank you very much for participation.
Don, thanks to you and thanks to everybody on the call.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.